All right, I had a few people ask me about or look at like they might have struggled a little bit with the word problem. So let's look at the word problem together. Can we do that? Yeah, because there is a word problem on the quiz tomorrow. There is a word problem on the quiz. And it's very, very, very similar to this. It says find the maximum height. Guys, where on the graph is the maximum height? No.
Oh, wait. Oh, the
Y coordinate of the vertex. Good, Ty. Okay, remember, this is just asking you for the Y coordinate of the vertex. So if I were to take this equation and put it in vertex form, that would help me to find the Y coordinate of the vertex. So let's do that. How do we do that? Well, remember we group these two together, and you don't pull out the GCF, you pull out A. I never said pull out the GCF, pull out A. What's A?
Negative 16.
Negative 16. So we're going to pull out negative 16. When you guys pull out negative 16, what's left? T squared.
Plus negative. No, minus 2.
Minus 2t. Leave the 3 on the outside. Because if I were to redistribute that, that would give me negative 16t squared plus 32t. Now we can complete the square. We're going to take half of what number?
Negative 2.
What's half of negative 2?
Negative 1.
And we're going to add negative 1 squared. Well, what's negative 1 squared?
1.
Times what?
Negative 16.
What's 1 times negative 16?
Negative 16.
Well, if you added negative 16 over here, you have to add negative 16 over there. So now let's factor this side here. What do you get on this side? It'd be negative 16 times, don't forget the squared, plus 3. And then over here I have negative 16 plus h of t. How do you get rid of the negative 16? Add 16. When you add 16 to both sides, what do you get? You get h of t equals negative 16 times t minus 1 squared plus what? That's vertex form. So what's the negative do? Opens what? Down. What's the 16 do? Stretches it. Does that affect my vertex? No. What does the negative 1 make it do? Right 1 up 19. So what is my vertex? 119. So what is the maximum height? 19. And the units would be on this. I don't even remember what this was. Golf ball. That would be what? Feet. Okay, that's part A. So basically, we had a golf ball that went from here to here. We know the maximum is at 19, and this unit was 1. Does that mean that that's 3? I didn't draw this to scale. Does that mean that's not 3? Does that mean that's 2? No, because the distance from here to here is not the same as the distance from here to here, because this would have to come down here, and you have another x-intercept there. So now when it says how long does it take the ball to hit the ground, we need to solve. We need to solve for this x-intercept. When does it hit the ground? So now what's the height of the ball when it hits the ground? 0. So you come in and you let this equal to 0. Now, guys, we can use square roots on this because I have a quantity squared. So let's get that quantity squared all by itself. What do you do to get this quantity squared all by itself? Minus 19. And then what do you do? After you subtract 19, what do we do? Divide by negative 16. What's a negative? Divided by a negative. Positive. So I get 19 over 16 equals t minus 1 squared. What do you do now? Square root it. You get plus or minus. So now I'm going to grab my calculator and do the square root of 19 over 16. And I get plus or minus 1.09. Okay. 1.09. What do you do now? Add the 1. How do I want you to write this? 1 plus or minus 1.09. So it's either 1 plus 1.09 or 1 minus 1.09. So it's either what? 2.09. Does that make sense? 2.09. Was it seconds?
Yeah.
Okay. And then this gives me negative 0.09. Can you have negative time?
No.
No. Here's your answer. There is one like this, exact same thing on your test. Okay, so here's your negative answer. Here's your positive answer. Questions? All right, any other questions on the homework? Were there any others that were confusing to you guys that anybody needs to see? All right, I will come back around in a minute. Your quiz tomorrow, by the way, is red calculators only. Okay, red calculators only. This is going to be posted on Schoology, but just so you know, here is what it covers. Factoring. First rule of factoring. That was that review that we did like forever ago, that choice board. First rule of factoring. GCF. If it's after you have to take out a GCF, you ask yourself, do I have a 2 terms? Binomial, trinomial, or 4 terms. If you have a binomial, you look to see if you have a what? Difference of squares. What is a difference of squares? Guys, if I ask you to just factor, not solve, just factor, and I give you 4x to the 6th minus 25. What multiplies together to give you 4x to the 6th?
2x cubed.
What multiplies together to give you 25? Now remember, it's just this plus that minus that. So what would my answer be? What many of you will just come down to?
2x cubed.
And 2x cubed. And you're done. Now, it just said factor, not solve. If it says solve, then you have to take each factor and set them equal to 0 and tell me what x is. So be very careful the difference of factor versus solve by factoring. If I say solve by factoring, you have a trinomial. A is 1. What multiplies to give you negative 6? That adds together to give you negative 1. Negative 3 and 2. So it factors into this. But it didn't just say factor. It said what? Solve by factoring. So when you set each of these equal to 0, what do you get for your answers? 3 and x equals. So please pay attention to the difference between factor. You just leave your factors. There's no equal sign. You don't solve anything. Solve by factoring, that means use factoring to get to what x is. Okay? All right, so factoring, simplifying radicals. Take the square root of 12, break it up into square root of 4, square root of 3. It's 2 square root of 3. Okay? Solve by using square roots, by factoring, by completing the square. Complex numbers, can you add them, multiply by the complex conjugate? What is the conjugate? If I have 2 plus 3i, it would be 2 minus 3i, okay? Add, simplify, add, subtract, multiply by the complex conjugate, and write an equation in standard form to vertex form. Identify the max and solve. Okay. Now, some of you are like, oh, I need examples of all these. This is what you get next year. Next year, Mr. Delap says, okay, there you go. Study. Okay? What I have for you posted on Schoology is a blank example of here's some factors. Just factor. Here's some examples of simplifying. Okay, here's some using square roots. Solve by factoring. Subtract. Guys, don't foil this. This does not say multiply. It says what? What do you do with that minus? Distribute. Okay. Multiply. Now you have to do some foiling. Multiply by the complex conjugate. Okay. Multiply by the complex conjugate. Solve. Doesn't tell you how. I would use square roots. Solve by completing the square. You must show work to support the method that I asked for. Write it in vertex form. And then the big word problem. Okay? All right, you got the rest of class time. I have the key and the blank posted on Schoology. Guys, I would know how to do I have a retake already in my files, which kind of has me a little worried that this quiz isn't going to. Anytime I already have a retake made, I'm like, okay. Okay, that tells me that this was a commonly asked for retake quiz. Don't use it in the first week of the 9 weeks. Okay? So study.
Oh boy.